Welcome to Purpose for Life podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Roberts, author of It's Deeper Than That and founder of The Great Reconnection. I'm so excited for listeners today to hear and experience Amanda Hinman, and I think you're going to come away uplifted with possibilities for your health, for your life, for your wellness, and for your being. So thank you, Amanda, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm honored to have this conversation.
Would you talk us through your journey with health and what health means to you?
First, I'll start with what health means to me. Health is honestly, it's like a leading core value because I think that health is the foundation of allowing you to show up with the energy, the vitality, the connection, the love, the emotional stability that we desire and
Mm,
are seeking in life. I think when we have physical health, that is the conduit to experiencing a fulfilled life. So it's at the center of my world,
mm,
candidly. And what brought me here and where I am today is because I value it deeply because I didn't always have it. There was a season in my life when I was navigating through some really difficult symptoms and effects of having an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. It really affected my energy and my mood and who I was, my capacity. Honestly,
mm,
it affected the capacity of how I could show up day in and day out. At that time, I was a mom of four young little girls and,
mm,
a wife and a friend. And the most important people in my world, my husband and my daughters, I didn't like who I was showing up as because
mm,
I was depleted, right? I didn't have that extra capacity to show up with patience, to show up with unconditional love and acceptance. I was snappy and I was exhausted and overwhelmed and in my own head. Like I literally remember just having this constant racing dialogue of racing thoughts and worries and judgments about myself and my food and also restrictions and what I needed to do in terms of exercise and what I needed to eat, and then guilt and shame if I couldn't live up to
mm,
those expectations. And that took me away from moments with my loved ones. Like it affected me very deeply. And then it got even more profound when I was, in the process of kind of working with naturopathic doctors, working on changing my nutrition and creating some rebuilding of health. And my oldest daughter, this was years and years ago, but my oldest daughter, who was only 8 years old at this time, she had always been highly sensitive and prone to anxiety, but she progressed when I was in a really bad place and didn't have the bandwidth to be the kind of mom that I wanted to be. She actually progressed to where she was having 10 to 15 seizures in a day.
wow.
Her anxiety really escalated, and like thinking back, it was a season of our life that was, I never want to relive it. It was
Mm,
terrifying. Day in, day out, I never knew if her next seizure was going to be the end. And
mm,
it was devastating, and it was really hard to, do all the things that conventional medicine at that time provided, which was symptom management. We had all the tests run and we were told that sometimes these things are hereditary. And the best way to support her was managing it through multiple benzodiazepine medications. She was taking 12 pills a day as an 8-year-old just to make it through 24 hours without having another seizure. And she was not my daughter. I didn't recognize her. She went from being this like inquisitive, always curious, like very intellectual, deep conversationalist to just like a zombie on the medication. And every fiber in my being knew that there has to be more to this story. Like there has to be more than this, just this is her fate.
mm,
And that's when I went back to study functional medicine, which is really about understanding how the different systems in the body are, our hormones, our digestion, our immune system, how everything works in this beautiful tapestry and influences and communicates with the different systems that work together. And it helped me to understand a deeper holistic picture of how to start to rebuild health and what
Mm.
is needed to create an environment for stability, an environment for thriving. And that journey allowed us to heal. Like literally, my autoimmune, I was able to essentially put that into a remission and no longer need medication, and my daughter as well. So she was able to wean off of all of her medication and has been seizure free for over 15 years since. So it was a very dark, dark time for
Mm.
that journey, but it was such a gift because it really was a catalyst to coming into connection with deeper understanding and appreciation of how our health can be rebuilt and what's possible. And that inspired my life's work. Now I love, that's like my greatest honor, is to help to support women to have a deeper understanding and appreciation of their body and reverence so that you can find balance and find vitality in a new way.
It's so inspiring to listen to you talk and your commitment and hunger. And before
Mhm.
we got on, we were centering, and I said, "You have so much inspiration and hope that you emit, and you are living it." You are it.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate what you're saying. And would you take a little bit more time to talk about functional medicine and maybe some of the things that helped your daughter and helped you, and some of the ways that you help women? And I know those are a lot of questions, but take them as you want.
So, functional medicine is essentially an approach to health that looks at what is, like I said, look at what is this unique individual, what is this unique set of situations, circumstances, life, lived experiences, and daily routines and daily habits that has created the dynamic that's happening for this person at this time, right? So it's interesting because looking at even my daughter at that time, who was 8 years old, and an elementary school student. It was a very different set of circumstances and situations than mine as a
Mhm.
34-year-old woman diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, right? Very, very different physiological differences in our bodies, as well as environmental influences and lifestyle patterns. Like she wasn't waking up like I was to, nurse my then 1-year-old daughter in the middle of the night, but she
Right.
had different factors. So functional medicine allows like a unique approach to looking at how, like I said, the various systems in the body work together to create whatever blockage or impairment or depletion is occurring to create the symptoms that are unwanted. So different than conventional medicine is, in the ICD guidebook, right now there's over 55,000 diseases, illnesses, syndromes that are named, and those can be useful because it gives a name to a collection of symptoms. However, what is lacking from that approach, that diagnostic approach, is it doesn't tell anything about what is the unique pathway or collection of factors that created these symptoms for this individual at this time.
Mhm.
So, simply because a woman or a man may have general anxiety disorder as the diagnostic code, it doesn't tell us anything about, well, is it because of some lack of key nutrients that the neurotransmitters were not able to be synthesized and created, or is it more of, is it more of some detoxification blockage that wasn't able to, your body's not able to adequately excrete? For example, excess estrogen can create anxiety, So it's
Mm.
looking at a variety of different factors to say, okay, for what are the puzzle pieces for this person at this time? And what I like about that is it really gives you a, I don't know, like a unique and a varied way to approach health. Albeit I'm all about simplifying because it can feel very complex quickly, if you're thinking of all of the different factors and the different ways. But I know that, for example, for a big catalyst for both myself and my daughter, and it's not universal because everyone has
Right.
different ways that their body takes in nutrients, but we as a family had been primarily vegetarian for a number of years prior to both of our health declines. And the two of us have a high need for amino acids. Amino acids are found in protein, for example. And we have certain proteins that we can synthesize on our own. Our body can make them by themselves, and some proteins, the essential amino acids, that must be taken in through food. And while they can be found in plant sources, absolutely, it tends to have a little bit more, it requires a little bit more disassembling and a little bit more work to create those amino acids if you have them from plant sources. So we didn't even know that we had a high demand, a high output, a really high load on our bodies, what we were asking it to do and to perform, given the environment with me, lack of sleep at the time. Her, she was as an 8-year-old in competitive gymnastics, piano, like now looking back, I can see she was probably overscheduled and overtaxed, for
Mm-hmm.
what was going on in her life. I didn't know that as a mom prior to this health challenge. But I guess what I'm saying is one of the key factors was tuning into consuming different types of nutrients, having more protein more frequently, and especially adding in some animal sources of protein to
Mm-hmm.
just meet our basic needs. Kind of like, did we have enough gas in the car to have the car go? We did not. And another thing that was really important for us was fiber. I use a very simple, like one hand meal plan framework for my clients to keep it easy. PFFV, protein, fiber, healthy fat, and vegetable. And I would suggest, like, if you could have every meal have some type of PFFV element, protein, fiber, healthy fat, vegetable, that's a good foundational starting point. So for my daughter and I, we were consuming a lot of vegetables, not quite hitting
Mm.
enough of the fiber and very low, relatively speaking, of the amino acid, the protein that were needed for our demand. So, that's one example to think about of how nourishment, how the food pieces can play such a huge role in what your body is able to, use and kind of support, and where it may fall short. But it goes deeper than that. We also looked a lot at, and that's because I had been working with a naturopathic doctor and taking supplements and making some food changes, and I still wasn't really creating the notable change until I started to incorporate how much the nervous system is affecting our health and our vitality. So a lot of the things that I, incorporate into the healing and what we did with my daughter is really looking to identify where our thoughts and our beliefs and our self-dialogue, our internal
Mm-hmm.
voices can trigger the body to go into that fight or flight stress response, which that in and of itself is shutting down digestion capacity on purpose. Nothing has gone wrong. Your body is operating brilliantly. It's just responding to the type of environment that it's being created. And when your body perceives that there's a stress or a threat, it says it's not really important for us to slow down and digest our food right now. It's really important for you to be prepared to fight or flee. So your heart rate picks up, your blood flows to the large muscle groups, but it's not necessarily flowing to the digestive system. You know what I mean? So there are other things that really help us to look at a holistic pattern of how can we create little, that can be as simple as like building in breathing breaks. Like just like we took a moment to get
Mm-hmm.
centered and set our intention. That's something I now do every single client session. And even my daughter has created a meditation practice and different practices to support her throughout her daily routine
Mm-hmm.
to create balance in the nervous system.
And do you get some of this information through blood work, or what are some of the ways? And one more thing, once I talked to you, and I think you were talking about micronutrients, or
Yes,
can your cell absorb the nutrients? I don't remember. Anyway, touch
yes,
those things.
yes. With a lot of the work that I do with women, we do look at blood work. Many times you'll go to your annual checkup and they'll do, very common comprehensive metabolic panel and a complete blood count and maybe a lipid panel, which is all useful and helpful information that gives us a sense of what's happening in your body. With the clients that I work with privately, we go a layer deeper and we look at micronutrient analysis. What's different about micronutrient is we're actually measuring urine. So it sounds strange, but you're like, what's coming out, what's being excreted in the body through urine shows what nutrients above and beyond getting into the blood supply. Because that's step number one is, did it go into the mouth, right? Did we consume it through food or through a supplement or a drink so that nutrient was available and made available?
Mm,
Then step number two is, was it able to go through our gut and
mm,
be absorbed into the bloodstream, which is very important. So I do a lot of work with helping my clients to optimize their gut health and their digestive capacity. That's where we can measure it in the blood and see some indicators there, which are great. But a step beyond that, step three is, can it go from the blood and be absorbed inside the cell where it is needed to create a cellular effect? The
Mhm.
byproduct of that cellular chemical reaction is a metabolite, which then your body goes to excrete via urine. So when we measure the urine metabolites, we can actually see what nutrients were able to go from the bloodstream into the cell
Mhm.
to create that chemical reaction and to be used as intended, right? So a simple kind of an example that people can often relate to is, you may have heard the term insulin resistance.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with that term,
Yes.
Suzanne? Yes. So insulin resistance, essentially what that is describing is a situation where the cell membrane is not allowing the hormone insulin to come inside the cell. Insulin acts as like an escort to glucose, blood sugar, which comes from our food. And so insulin's job is to like hook arms and escort that glucose molecule and bring it inside the inner part of the cell so it can be used inside the mitochondria to generate energy.
Mm.
But the term insulin resistance essentially means the cell receptors on the outside have said, well, we've seen way too much glucose. We have way too much. We're going to kind of we're going to close our door. We're going to lock the door and say, we don't want any more. We don't want any more. And so that insulin is being resisted from bringing the glucose inside the cell. Well, that same thing can happen with vitamins, with minerals. If things are not being absorbed inside the
Mm.
cell, then the cell doesn't have what it needs to create energy and to do the job that it was designed to do, right? So that's why the metabolic micronutrient test actually shows us what is able to really fully be absorbed at a cellular level and provide your cells what they need to function at a high rate.
And how do you support better micronutrient absorption? Is that through
Absorption.
supplements, or is it through foods, or is it a special something that helps your cell?
There are two key things that can help to increase absorption. First, it's we have to look at, is the adequate amount coming into your body, right? So what are
Okay.
you eat? Are you eating enough? Sometimes it's as simple as, we can see people are really low in their antioxidant levels. For example, antioxidants are what help us to keep inflammation down in the body. So then we want to add in more foods that are rich in antioxidants, things like blueberries, for example, other other fruits and vegetables that are really rich in antioxidants. Make sure, or perhaps add a supplement. So that's the first step. The other thing is, again, I talked a little bit before about digestion. There are ways we can, for free at home, test your body's stomach acid levels to
Mm.
see if you're able to adequately break down food and digest it effectively so that it can then be absorbed. It's very common, especially after age 40, where our digestive strength and capacity starts to diminish. And I shared with you previously, Suzanne, that if your body is in that fight or flight response, then your digestive secretions are being inhibited on purpose. Like nothing has gone wrong.
Mm.
Your body is responding the way it's designed to respond. But sometimes it starts to bring up and these are where the conversations are with my clients of like, let's look at your routine. Do you feel stress? Is there a mental emotional layer of stress? Is there other stressors that can sometimes be is I'm kind of going off on a lot of different directions here, but this is how multifaceted it is.
Right.
Sometimes if you sit at your desk and you're sedentary for long hours doing work, or you're looking at screens, that in and of itself can put a stressor on the body because
Mm.
it's not getting the signal to move. And you're like staring at artificial blue light, which is very stimulating for our eyes and our optic system. So finding ways to identify, like we look at like the internal stressors, the environmental stressors, are there a lot of these boxes that are being ticked? And if so, we get to build in a little bit of reprieve, a little bit of recovery in between in your daily rhythm so that the body can navigate between sympathetic, fight or flight, and back to parasympathetic,
Mhm.
rest, digest, absorb. and be able to more effectively break that down. And then the last piece I'll add on is oftentimes too, again, that's why fat is really important, healthy omega-3 fatty acids, because that cell membrane is comprised of lipids, of fatty acids and cholesterol. And if we don't have pliable, soft, smooth, flexible cell membranes, because maybe we're not consuming enough of healthy omega-3 fatty acids, or
Hmm.
they've just become, kind of damaged by oxidative stress, then it's hard for those nutrients to pass in and back and forth in and out of the cell membrane. So, looking at again the nutrients piece, so like, are we consuming adequate amounts of healthy omega-3 fatty acids to have pliable, soft cell membranes?
This is fascinating. It's very, very interesting. And I appreciate the way you're bringing this information to us. It's very user friendly, is what I would say. I don't
Oh,
have to go to
good.
school to figure this out. I can understand everything that you're saying, and it's making perfect sense to me. And
Good.
I love that you were able to help yourself and your daughter live vibrant lives and have rest built into it and sanity. I'm going to call it
Mhm.
sanity because I think you're talking about how much the mind can disrupt what's
Mhm.
happening inside of us in such a deep way. And it's our minds that we want to help get softer and kinder towards ourselves and uh, create space in our minds for loving thoughts to come in and uh,
Yes.
grace and mercy and all the beautiful things that are natural within us, actually, and get the mind used to what's innate within us.
That's so on point, Suzanne. And it's really beautiful because a lot of the work, like I said, I primarily support women
Right.
over age 40, 40s, 50s, 60s. And an interesting thing happens. I actually think it's like divine orchestration. An interesting thing happens because that's the season when many women are entering either perimenopause or menopause. So your
Right.
hormone levels are shifting and changing, and your sex hormones are starting to drop off and decline. I actually believe that that is very beautiful and intentional. The challenge is sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone in particular, act as a little bit of a buffer because the effects of the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline in
Mm-hmm.
particular, have more, like I said, some of these unwanted impacts
Mm-hmm.
on our overall systems. When we're of what I would say childbearing age, when we're menstruating, and many of us are moms ourselves, or raising children, or helping in different ways and caretaking for others, we do have a little bit of a built-in buffer margin with those sex hormones being higher. Well, as they start to drop off and decline, our bodies are more susceptible to the effects of cortisol and adrenaline.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
that's when we see weight gain around the belly, right? That's when we see disrupted sleep. That's when we
Mm.
see mood swings and things like that. A lot of the unwanted symptoms get louder because that
Interesting.
margin has been taken away.
Mm-hmm.
And while it can be very challenging and it's not comfortable, that's why I'm like, oh, I love working with women in that season, because it is almost like a self rediscovery. And it's
Mm.
almost like our physiology forces us to create new patterns and new relationship with ourselves. And it's a whole transition into, like you said, greater grace, self-love, self-acceptance, and new rhythms and new routines, where it's non-negotiable to put your self-care on the calendar more so than what you
Right.
could get away with perhaps when you were in your 20s or your
So
30s.
true. I just love that you said that. That's so true.
Hmm.
I find that for me, I'm 73 and
Hmm.
I require a lot of stillness and rest and
Hmm.
deep reflection to be sustainable, honestly, in a way that I didn't used to need. I have a lot of energy
Hmm.
anyway. And for me to be sustainable with that energy, I need to rest more. I need stillness. I need more nature. And yeah, it's interesting that you said that. We're going to have to begin to wind down for today. I could listen to you forever. I'm like mesmerized listening to you. I'm sure our listeners are too. Can you tell us how our listeners can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. I think the best place to go is my website, hinmanholistic.com. And I would invite, anyone who's listening that is curious and inspired to say, hey, I want to have greater understanding and
Hmm.
clarity around my body and perhaps what signals my body is showing me. I do provide a hormone freedom assessment, and this is a little bit different. It's not all about like, what is your estrogen level? What is your progesterone level? It really helps you to see a pattern in the rhythm of how your body is communicating to you
Mm,
and where it could use support first. So I often find for some women, is it a fueling and digestion mismatch where perhaps those cells are not getting the absorption that they need for the nutrients? Or is it a stress response? Your endocrine system is hypervigilant, overdrive. Or is it more of a metabolic mismatch with the energy and the output type of
mm.
thing? So these are the most common patterns that I see, and that you could take a 5 minute, 18 question assessment and really get clarity of, ooh, this is priority number one for me to start to focus on.
That's great. Thank you for having that assessment available. Thank you.
Yes.
I
My
always like
pleasure.
to ask my guest, what do you think the purpose for life is?
Oh, I think the purpose for life is connection and love. Connect with people and really tap into that which brings you joy and can share love.
Thank you for saying that. Do you have anything else you want to leave for our listeners here today?
I'll go back to inspiration and hope. If you're in a place where your health is not where you want it to be right now, I'm hopeful that maybe some new pearl dropped in today with what else could be possible, and to maintain that hope that your body can always shift and change into a new normal. It's amazing. Our bodies are really resilient and brilliant.
Absolutely, and it feels like this is a great, detective to go figure
Mhm.
out, like, to a sleuth. Let's figure out
Yes,
how to support the body do what it's capable of and be vibrant and whole while we're living our lives, so thank you so much. Thank you.
my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to us again. This is Purpose for Life podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Roberts. We had with us today Amanda Hinman. I'm the author of It's Deeper Than That and the founder of The Great Reconnection. And we look forward to you subscribing and listening. Thank you.